Well, we're speaking here with Deputy Bernard Durkin, who's the chairperson of the Joint Oireachtas Committee on European Affairs. Deputy Durkin, I'd like to thank you for participating in the Politics Talk project. Deputy Durkin, I'd like to put just a couple of questions to you about the new responsibilities facing the Oireachtas with the adoption of the Lisbon Treaty, which occurred, of course, on the 1st of this month. And first of all, do you believe that your committee is particularly well prepared for its increased responsibilities and increased workload?
I think we're preparing. We have had a past experience to go on, of course. The Joint Secretary Legislation Committee was in operation from 1973, and I've been a member of it from 1981. So we have had a lot of experience in that area. So we know where the problems exist, where inadequacies exist, where extra administration is required, etc. But at the same time, we know now that there's a new volume of correspondence likely to emerge, and we are putting in place and have put in place interim measures to deal with the situation. And by the end of a 6-month period, ending in June next, we hope to have a fairly substantial review of all the institutions within the House, the committee system, the European Affairs Committee, the European Scrutiny Committee, and the sectoral committees, with the view to ensuring that they coordinate their efforts to bring about a situation whereby the committee system, as it stands, will have had an opportunity of discussing in detail the issues that affect this country, that may affect this country in the future, and that we have an opportunity to discuss innovations coming from the European Parliament, from the European Commission, and also from the Council.
And then in terms of that relationship that exists between your committee and, let's just say, the rest of the Oireachtas, do you think there is a good one? Could you say that the committee represents the Oireachtas adequately, or is there more that needs to be done in terms of getting a healthy relationship between the two?
I think that we can improve every situation, and we should try to do that to make sure that we utilise in full the powers that have been given to the member state parliaments by the Lisbon Treaty. This is one of the things that we've always looked for. We've always proclaimed in each member state parliament, we've always said, everybody's agreed, that we need more power, we need more democracy. So this is the way to do it. It will happen, I think, in the next 6 months, that we will be able to see, having regard to the putting in place of the interim measures, we'll be able to see, I think, at first hand, any inadequacies that exist, if there are any. But I believe that the committee system does have the willingness, which is important, and the power and authority, and takes the responsibility very seriously. I think they will do that. And we do need to, admittedly, to have more interaction with the sectoral committees. But ultimately, when everything is said and done, as they say, legislation that has been vetted by the various sectoral committees relative to Europe should come before either the Scrutiny Committee or the European Affairs Committee by way of prior engagement in the case of the European Affairs Committee or in the relation to the scrutiny, eitherwise.
And I suppose I would turn to those increased powers provided for under Lisbon. I mean, this is all part of the movement of democratising the Union, involving the citizen to a greater extent. Do you feel that, obviously, this power where the national parliaments can, where 1/4 object, or in some cases 1/3 object, can oblige the Commission to review a piece of draft legislation, do you feel that this obligation to merely review is an adequate one?
Well, the review, of course, takes place in the first instance. The action takes place afterwards, of course, and we can put in place, we can invoke the orange card or the red card, as the case may be. We have to obviously engage with our European parliamentary colleagues to ensure that we get the cooperation and the support from them as well. Excuse me.
And that's, I suppose, where I would turn, is that level of cooperation that's required. Firstly, in terms of interparliamentary cooperation, is something which is of increasing interest. Where we're going to use these democratising tools, and this one in particular, do you feel that there's a sufficient level of interparliamentary cooperation between, for example, the Oireachtas here and the Danish Parliament or the UK Parliament?
I think that's something that we must improve on. I have always had the view that there's an urgent necessity for constant dialogue between the members of the national parliament or the relevant committees in order to ensure that we each know what our internal problems are. For instance, it wouldn't make very good sense to propose something that was going to be of a put some other member state at a serious disadvantage. So we must have some kind of unified thinking. And if we do that properly, the Lisbon results of the Lisbon Treaty, the implementation of the Lisbon Treaty, will be hugely successful. It is of major importance that we do have, as often as possible, dialogue with the member state parliamentarians, because we will then know what their worries and their concerns are. They will also know what our worries and concerns are, and that is equally important, because we remember we will be dealing with issues that arise in the European Parliament, in the European Commission, and in the Council. And the member state parliamentarians are uniquely placed in between their respective electorates and the European institutions to be able to give first-hand information and give a first-hand assessment of the issues that arise as they arise, and in fact before they arise. It is equally important that one should at all times be proactive and to set out the issues that are of concern not only to the national parliament and national parliamentarians, but also to Europe as a whole. And we have always held the view in the European Affairs Committee that we should speak insofar as we can for all of the interests throughout Europe, and at the same time bring to the fore the national interest. There will be occasions when it won't be possible to put the national interest before others, and similarly there'll be occasions where it might not be possible to put the European community interest above and beyond what the national interest might be. And that's the unique system in which the situation in which we now find ourselves. It's going to be of major importance how we deal with that. In the next 6 months, I think we will have an opportunity of assessing how the institutions operate, how they interrelate with the European Affairs and European Scrutiny Committee, how they interact and relate with each other and the sectional committees in the House, and how the respective committees deal with the views and concerns of the electorate, the broader community outside. That means as well that we will have to meet the various representative groups in our society, from civil society. It may well be that they can come up with an issue or a case that we may not have observed ourselves. It may also mean, and very often does, that the committees and the parliamentarians themselves will identify issues that somebody else might not have seen, because each will be coming from their own particular perspective. But the main thing I think that we need to remember now is this, is that we have been given responsibility. The Houses of Parliament have been given responsibility right across Europe. We should exercise those responsibility with responsibility. We should exercise those powers fully. But it is hugely important that we are responsible and that we keep in mind the common good at all times.
And just finally, when it comes to exercising that power, where your committee does spot an issue where you believe Irish sovereignty and European subsidiarity hasn't been adhered to adequately, do you think you can commit to actually trying to use this mechanism going forward?
Oh, I think so. I think that's hugely important. I believe, and this is my own personal opinion, I believe that in the interim at least, in a situation where something like that arises, I think the Committee of European Affairs or European Scrutiny should report to the Houses of the Oireachtas, as is the normal case with a report from the Seanad or a committee report in the case of the Dáil. And normally the report arises and is read into the record at the order of business to the effect that the committee has examined a particular issue, it has agreed with it or has disagreed or has amended or suggested amendments. That should be reflected at that particular stage, and it has to be done quickly because there's a very short time span, of course, a window within which you can operate effectively. If that is done, and we expect that it will be done, I see no reason why it can't and shouldn't be done, that is in accord with the Lisbon Treaty, and it is also in accord with the requirement of the member state parliaments to be able to get directly involved and to exercise that element of greater democracy which we've all aspired to in the past. I think that we can do that, and I think that the proper procedure is to monitor how the progress over the next 6 months during the interim arrangements, and then to put in place arrangements which will remain there and which will operate and may well be amended from time to time, but which will need to be able to do the job that was originally intended.
Okay. Deputy Durkan, thank you very much for giving us your time, and I wish you the very best of luck with your committee work.
Thank you very much.